I have a couple of videos that I want to get to today. In this one, I just want to provide you some encouragement and some more confirmation in the book of Daniel, in Daniel 11 of Daniel 9. So first of all, what I want to say is that Daniel 11, if I were to sum up what it's basically illustrating, is that it's illustrating what it has referenced in Daniel 2 regarding a divided kingdom. And so it's demonstrating that division, that fight, that infighting from this Antichrist kingdom. And it starts out in Daniel 11 talking about how this Antichrist has invaded the beautiful land. And then there's this period of just fighting where the beautiful land is no longer mentioned. And then at the very end, it talks about the beautiful land again. Well, last night I was asking God for, just for confirmation and some encouragement, and he brought me to Daniel 11 and also pointed out that the Holy Covenant is not mentioned until the end. And so if this fight were going on with God's people here, the Holy Covenant would be mentioned at some point. The beautiful land would be mentioned at some point. So what is this gap from the beginning of the chapter until the end? The beautiful land is only mentioned at the beginning of the chapter and then at the end. The Holy Covenant is only mentioned at the end of the chapter. Why is that? The explanation is what I've been trying to tell you guys, that in Daniel 9, we're told that there's going to be a period of deception where truth is thrown down, where God's people are thrown down, and Babylon has been planted. That is the deception. We were told that also by Paul, that savage wolves were going to come in and would not spare the flock. And he goes on to say, so hold fast to what I've taught you. Don't be deceived. And what I've told you guys is that from the perspective, from the point of John telling people in 1 John 2 who the Antichrist was and that it was already here, then defining it to be those who came out from them, meaning that group of ethnic Jews who were descended, coming out from them but did not belong to them. Therefore, John is saying they call themselves Jews, but they are not. As the word says, they are of the synagogue of Satan. As Jesus said when he was here, I know you're descended from Abraham, but you're not his children because you do not do what he does. Those antichrists slaughtered Jesus and his people. There were no more of God's people left because God's people would have been shouting from the rooftops, as the word says, what he whispers in our ears, and they would have been killed. And so that deception was planted. So there are two things that happened. One, God's people were killed. Two, the deception was planted. And we're told in Daniel 9 that deception has continued from the 69th week when the Anointed One was put to death. Paul told us when it happened because Paul said it's going to happen after I leave. He told us when it was going to happen. When did Catholicism come in, guys? After Paul left. When did the prostitutes come out of her? Well, it began with Luther, didn't it? Then continued in Knox and Wesley, Joseph Smith, Ellen G. White. All of these are prostitutes to the harlot Catholic Church, even though they claim that she's the Antichrist. Where did they get their Easter, Christmas, Sunday, Saturday, the image of the cross, images of statues of Jesus, pictures of Jesus? How do they know that Jesus looks like a hippie? How do they know he's white? That's kind of weird, isn't it? A white Arab Jesus, huh? So these are the things I've been teaching you, and Daniel 11 supports it. Daniel 11 proves it. That in this whole infighting, don't you think that they would be fighting against God's people? Unless there are no God's people during that time. Unless there is no covenant, as the word says in the book of Daniel. He goes out to confirm a covenant with many for 1:7 at the 70th week, and that's exactly what we're seeing at the end of the chapter, that during the 70th week, there's mention of the Holy Covenant. Where's that been the whole time? So this is more confirmation there's some other confirmation that just before the witnesses are killed in Daniel 11, that the Antichrist, which is the image of the Antichrist, the eighth kingdom of fake Israel, by the way, the image that's been set up in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived, that was what John defined to be Antichrist, those who came out from them, those who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan, as is referenced in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. That's the image that was set up in honor of them, of fake Israel, those who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Okay, I'm using the language of the word so that you understand what we're talking about. So at the appointed time, he will invade the south again, but this time the outcome will be different from what it was before. So now the south is representing the United States. It's whoever has succeeded in power, whoever is the dominant power is the king of the north, and whoever is the subordinate power is the king of the south. We know who is the subordinate power from Revelation 13. We know that the United States is, that the second beast, as is referenced in Revelation 13, is doing the bidding of the image that it has created. Okay, let's just look at it in real time. How does it do its bidding? Well, it requires everyone to worship it, and it will not allow anyone to buy or sell unless it has the mark of the beast, which means that you're submitting to it in your heart, and that's coming out of your right hand and your forehead. It's not a chip, it's not a tattoo, it's not something coming from the outside that's defiling you. The word says you're going to be justified by your heart, and that is where the source of defilement is coming from. So these are the ways it's doing its bidding. So we already know that it is submitting to it. Let's look at it in real time. Who does whose bidding here? We don't need this argument about who does the tail wag the dog. We're supposed to know from biblical prophecy, aren't we? That's what biblical prophecy says. Who's imposing the tariffs and sanctions and blacklisting people who speak out against Israel? What's happening to Francesca Albanese? Who's imposing that? The United States is, at the behest of Israel. The image it requires everyone to worship. So we know what's going on. This isn't a complicated argument. It's not something that we need a political commentator to explain to us. They don't have understanding. The only one who has understanding is the one who is fulfilling. That's God. At the appointed time, he will invade the south again, but this time, the outcome will be different from what it was before. Now it says in verse 30, ships of the western coastlands will oppose him, and he will lose heart. Now, a little while back, we talked about this with regard to the flotillas and how literal ships are opposing him. So those flotillas were going out, literal ships from the western coastlands opposing him. And what I told you is God is giving us a physical representation of something that is to come or is being done in the spiritual, because we know that the word actually defines ships, such as in Revelation 17 and 18, to be associated with Babylon, in this case associated with the Antichrist. These ships are essentially the merchants that are getting rich off of the luxuries of that system. Well, those accepting pack money are the prostitutes of this system. In a little while, I'll be doing a video explaining this at great length with regard to Tyre, what Tyre is, what Tyre represents. But here you should understand that ships in Scripture are referring to those who are associated with these systems and are getting rich off of them. Those who accept pack money are bought. They are prostitutes. They have chosen what is going to master them and dictate what they're going to do. And that's what we've been seeing in the United States, in United States politicians, including Trump. So it says, ships of the western coastlands will oppose him, and he will lose heart. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the Holy Covenant. He will return and show favor to those who forsake the Holy Covenant. So, by the way, he's going to keep returning because he actually has plants in our government. And so, whereas the United States used to spy on Israel quite a bit, they don't so much anymore because of those plants in the government. Because our government has been invaded and is not being run by America First. It doesn't matter what they say. They're not being run by America First people. Now, what I want to show you about this is that, I don't know, is this the beginning? First of all, is this the beginning of this happening, or are we at the end of this happening? I don't know. But the very next thing that's going to happen is that the witnesses are going to be killed once this has happened. So the encouragement that I'm giving you is that this is moving along. This hasn't been a false alarm. We went with the information that we had available to us. So now I didn't want to speak too soon about this because, we've had a lot of performative situations in which Netanyahu and Trump are fabricating some hostility towards each other, and this way they can throw Iran off and go in and attack. I wanted to make sure that that's not what we were seeing again. But, and I still kind of hold a little reservation for that. But what we have seen is that Trump has been outspoken about Netanyahu, mainly through J.D. Vance, warning Israeli critics that if he was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, he might not be attacking the only powerful ally that he has left anywhere in the entire world. I mean, them is fighting words. It's also not entirely true because they have Modi. But the implication is that people are criticizing Trump and J.D. Vance is defending him, and he's also calling out that they're in some ways at the mercy of the United States. Does that change the fact that the United States is acting at their behest? No, doesn't change that fact. Also doesn't change the fact that the United States government likes to manipulate a version of circumstances to make it look like they're in control, they're the ones in power. It's become a joke. It's become an embarrassment. Nevertheless, Israelis are upset that the U.S. is negotiating with Iran for a peace deal. So J.D. Vance came out pretty hard against Israel, saying, I wouldn't be criticizing the one leader left on earth that's sympathetic to you. And then Miriam Adelson posted some criticism of Trump in her newspaper. So these are the two main things that I've seen, and Iran is a huge sticking point for Israel. To lose that support, to have the United States signing a peace deal, or potentially signing a peace deal. A peace deal has not actually been signed. But for them to be in the process of doing this is a major problem for Israelis. And it seems to be, we all have to discern this, it seems to be reason for him to lose heart, that he's being opposed. This is a shift in what we've seen, isn't it? Now, I also want to remind you that what would be happening concurrently during this time or subsequent to this verse 29 and 30 of the ships of the western coastlands opposing him, and then him losing heart, and then him venting his fury against the Holy Covenant, and then returning to show favor to those who forsake the Holy Covenant, and then in verse 31, rising up to desecrate the temple fortress and abolish the daily sacrifice. What will happen subsequent to that is that Babylon will fall. So that army is going to come against Babylon, the deception of counterfeit Christianity. And how is it going to do that? Well, it's going to go after the mobilizers, Babylon the Great and the prostitutes that bore out of her. J.D. Vance not only is representing right now as this spokesman the United States, the false prophet, but he is also in many ways representing Babylon the Great. He claims to be a Catholic. He's standing in this position, this Catholic position of being against the war in Iran, though he's not explicitly stated that. They have kept him from being able to say anything, and all of a sudden he's saying something. So that should speak a message to Netanyahu that not only are the ships of the western coastlands opposing him, but now one of the ships of the western coastlands is rising up and giving voice to that platform, or is giving platform to that position. So I just want to remind you that when God says he's going to do something, he rarely does it all at once or in the way that you think he's going to do it. Right now, what we're doing is looking at biblical prophecy and watching what's unfolding and saying, okay, this could be it. Unless God says this is definitively it, we don't speak that way. What I'm saying to you is this appears to be it, or at least part of it. Please discern this message with God.